Hello, welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me as I explore the wide world of pens. Yes, you see before you a pen you kind of might recognize. For those of you that follow the Chinese pen market, this is the new, maybe improved, Jinhao 159, which now they've branded X159, X450, X750. So this pen has one and many interesting traits to it. The first one, and the cap takes a lot of turns to get off, almost 3, is it has a nib that Jinhao's not put in a pen before. It's a 40 millimeter nib, kind of in a number 8 size range, and it's a new feed, a new collar. They've done a lot of changes, and I've been impressed with all of them. The price has gone up slightly. Here's my buy on eBay. It arrived in 16 days, which I think is pretty good. If you're interested in this pen, just do a search for X159. I think that's the easiest. And that seems to show up. There was only one seller when I bought this, but now there's more. And the price looks like it's consistent. Around $8 US delivered. You may find a cheaper price, but they charge you shipping, so at the end of the day, you're still paying about $8. So one may ask, how does this differ from a previous model of the 159? And I just happen to have one here. It's an orange, so we can easily tell the difference between this and the new X159. So the clip is definitely different. I think they made it more stylized, more modern looking. You know, same design with that finial with a metal band. There's a cap band in the middle, slightly smaller one on the new one. And it has Jinhao in the front and the model number on the back. And if we go down to the bottom of the barrel, we'll see a similar bullet-shaped finial at the end of the barrel. Let's see how many turns it takes to have this up. This cap comes off in 1 turn. So it's interesting that when they made the change, it takes a lot more turns. There's finer threads there, and that's probably one of the reasons, and maybe because it's plastic on plastic threads, they wanted to make it, finer threads for some reason. A little piece of gunk there. Here it's plastic on metal threads because there's a plastic insert into this metal cap. And this 159 is all metal. It's almost 50 grams, and this is about 26 grams, so it's about half the weight, which is nice. And if we unscrew the section, we'll see a little bit of obviously difference there. The standard Jinhao converter, which I find works very well. It's the one in the original 159, and this one fits much tighter, which I really like. And it has that nice metal band at the bottom, which I also like. So to me, it's a little bit of an upscale converter, but I think whatever converter you get is going to be just the luck of the draw, or whatever the seller puts in. Who knows? Also, that section is a very different design. It has a slight upturn at the end, and it's a little bit of a matte finish at the end, which I think is very nice because your fingers now know when you're at the end of it. Here they put a ring of metal, but then there's a lot more metal in that original 159. So we're going to take a look at all the changes that they made to accommodate that number 8 nib. And then we're going to find a suitable ink and see how that fine number 8 nib writes. Stay tuned. So I think it'd be good to compare all the different components that go into a nib assembly. Obviously, the nib, the feed, and the nib collar. Putting a number 8 nib, it's the first time I think Jinhao has done that, or any Chinese main manufacturer has done that. They needed to have a new feed, and that obviously necessitated a different nib collar. It's nice to see that the Chariot logo is retained on that. And it is a substantial increase. No question about that. Here's some measurements that I made to put things in perspective. And let's look at some of these components a little more closely. The feed is a real major redesign. The fins are much different between these two nibs. There's no flat spot on the larger number 8 feed like there is on the number 6, so it's not keyed into the nib collar. It's just interesting what they did. I'm not a feed designer, but this looks like it's more traditional, obviously, but this is the more typical plastic feed in the number 6, so I'm, interested in how it's going to feed ink to that big nib. Obviously, they felt they needed to make some major changes to the feed to accommodate the characteristics of the number 8 nib. Why did they make a number 8 nib? Well, my feeling is that they saw how pen buyers get all excited about a number 8 nib, so they figured, why not? And they took their largest pen, or one of their largest pens, to put the number 8 nib in. So why are the cutouts at the end of the nib? Not exactly sure, but my theory is it just reduces the weight of the nib. There's a lot more metal in this nib in the number 8 than in the number 6, so maybe they recycled some of that they knocked out. Who knows, or that may be something they felt would work well with their new feed. And there's an X159 at the bottom, or one. The finish is a little bit different, not quite as shiny, but it's still a stainless steel nib. And it's marked to fine, and it looks like it's a pretty fine. We'll see how it writes. Do I like the X159? I have to admit I like it much more than I ever expected to. And over the course of the last couple of days, it's been writing very consistently, very well, which is a very good sign. What's the future for the X159? Well, my guess is it will start a whole new series. I'm certain they'll have many colors, maybe gold and silver trim, gold tone and silver tone, as you must know. As you can see, it's pretty much exactly the same size and shape as the original metal version. So I think that's good that they retained that. I like the way that they changed the section. It's more in line with modern pens. So overall, do I recommend the pen? Yes, I do. And I found it on AliExpress at an even more reasonable price, including shipping. Here's that listing on AliExpress. If you like a big pen and you want to experience a number 8 nib, the X159 is a pen to consider. Certainly for the price, how can you go wrong? So now for some more editorial comments, a summation showing the dimensions and another writing sample, and then we'll call it a wrap. So the only real downside that I can see is the number of turns it takes to get the cap off. Almost 3. And I have to admit, considering the original 159 came off in a little over 1 turn, I'm mystified. Who knows the reasons why? Maybe because this is injection molded, i.e. precious resin, and it does feel good. It feels as good as the higher end pens that are injection molded. You don't see any mold marks, seam lines, or whatever. It's well done. And for the price point, extremely well done. It certainly fits well in the hand without posting. And you may ask, does it post? And the answer is yes, it does. You need to put a little bit of pressure and that cap really slides in securely. You notice the change in the weight, but it's still pretty well balanced in the hand. And that cap is secure. It's not going to come off once you put it on there securely. That section is good. We'll give you the dimensions of the section. It might be a little bit big for some people. It's about the biggest section in any pen that I have. So let's put some more Waterman Serenity Blue ink on paper, and then we'll do a final summation. So I like the nib more than I expected. They did a nice job with it. It certainly feels a little bit different on the paper than any other Jinhao nib that I have, and that's a good sign. I'd say it's on the wet side, and forget this one, the nib wasn't on the paper, but it is a little bit soft, which is also surprising. No pressure. A little bit more pressure, a little bit more pressure. You know, not something you're going to want to do in everyday writing, but it certainly works well, and that feed keeps up extremely well. So overall, kudos. Jinhao did a good job creating a pen that I think many people can like. Some people talked about this fine nib being a little bit more to the medium side, and it's certainly a generous fine, but let's take a look at some other nibs to compare. So the first nib is a Jinhao medium, and this is definitely a much wider line, almost twice as wide as the fine nib, and I'd say it's a very generous medium on the broad side of medium, and it is also very wet. So I don't have a Jinhao extra fine, but I have this Kaiglu extra fine. So as you can see, that is definitely an extra fine line. And you can also hear it. You get a little bit more feedback from the paper, but that's typical because this has very little tipping material on it. It's also a generous writer. So here we have a Jinhao number 6 fine in a Centennial 100 pen. And I think this is very similar to the fine, the number 8 fine you have up here. It's a black ink. So I think Jinhao was consistent, but it's certainly nowhere near extra fine. And you need to keep that in mind when you decide on what nib you want. Right now, I think they only come in extra fine and fine. I'll double check that and let you know. So overall, I'm very happy with this pen. Let's give it a rating. And I'm going to give it a 9.6. The nib gets 1 check for being consistent, good writer. Feels good on paper. And the build and the design, construction, whatever, also get a check. It's well made. And it gets 3 checks for value. I can't imagine a pen in this price range performing any better. So, give it a shot. Give it a try. What do you have to lose? A few bucks. So thank all of you for watching. I hope this video finds you safe, healthy, and happy, enjoying your pens, maybe looking forward to a new pen to add to your already growing pen collection, if that is the case. We've reached the end of this video, and we're going to say bye. This is a very consistent writer. I like it.